Let's see what happens when we dare to color outside the lines. You're listening to Colormixology, the debut podcast from Sherwin-Williams.
Hello, and welcome to Colormixology, the podcast where we connect with the creative people who are shaping the design and color landscape. I'm your host, Sue Wadden, interior designer and head of color marketing for Sherwin-Williams. If you missed last month's episode, I had a chat with HGTV's Vern Yip about our 2025 color capsule of the year. If you missed it, make sure you check it out. Today, we've got a friend of the show in Dabito. He's a designer, artist, and author of the book Old Brand New. And he's here to talk about the joys of accepting the unexpected in design, both in the little details and the process of designing itself. So thank you so much for joining us, Dabito.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here and chat about color.
I can't wait for people to get to know you. So I like to start all of our episodes by asking our guests, how did you get started in the design industry? I think that's a kind of a fascinating question, and everyone's got a different journey. But more specifically for you, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, this is all about color and how I feel like you are a designer that leads with color. And so where did your love of color and design start? So take it away.
So I would say color for me started at a very young age. I remember joining a lot of color contests when I was a kid. There was this store called Sanrio Surprises, which is like a Japanese store that had Hello Kitty, Pachaco, all those beautiful, fun characters. And I remember just joining a lot of those contests and winning and realized, oh my God, I'm good at this, And that was from elementary to middle school. And my mom also loved color. She would dress me in aubergine puffer jackets. She would buy me red leather shoes. And I just remember, wow, this is so fun. And I just embraced it. She embraced it. And then I would say in high school, I started getting interested in decorating my space. Well, growing up, I didn't have my own bedroom. I slept in the same bedroom with my mom, my sister, and my dad. And finally, I moved into the living room. And I was excited about decorating, creating, carving out my own space. And I remember going shopping for curtains with my aunt. And I remember picking out these yellow curtains. And to this day, I still love yellow so much. And when I see yellow, I think about that time, that first time buying something for my space with my aunt. And it brings me so much joy. And going into college, I started as a chemical engineer major. It wasn't until maybe the latter half of that first year, I decided to pivot into art and major in printmaking. And so I worked with color, mixing inks, had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, I think it was after college I started blogging about decorating my own space on a budget. And my blog just grew bit by bit. And here I am doing interiors. But I have a background in graphic design.
I think that's an important thing to note. If people are kind of looking at your Instagram page or any articles that you've been featured in, you're very graphic in your representation. And so you can see where pattern and repetition is integral to your work. And I can absolutely see that. And I love it. It just kind of identifies you uniquely, and it gives you your own really a point of view on color. But I want to go back to that conversation about unique, the first color that you really remember. I think all designers have that story, and I've never heard it put that way. When I was a little girl, I was maybe 7, and I was having a chance to redo my room. And then instead of, the typical maybe pink or purple, I picked navy blue wallpaper with these little teeny tiny flowers. And my mom was astonished. She was like, "You want navy blue in this room?" And, to this day, I think about that moment and I think about that color, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I grow up, but it was an impact on me. So I love that about yellow. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next couple questions. But one thing that, again, with your design style, the unexpected, I want to talk about how that's a part of the surprise and delight of what you create in your interiors, and how that's influenced your career.
I would say I just, my approach to interiors or decorating, styling is very much similar to how I approach graphic design. I look at it, I think all design in general share the same principles. And it's all about balance, contrast, the hierarchy of creating, something visually impactful. And yeah, I love playing with color and contrast and mixing patterns and solids and things like that. I love it. And I don't think there is like a trick. I've always believed in just doing it
Yeah.
and playing with it and like not taking it too seriously
Well, and
and not overthinking it.
not overthinking it, right? That's what's so unexpected. So do you start with color when you're starting to work? Like some designers start with texture or pattern or material, but do you start with color?
I do. I think about what is the vibe, what is the story, because color is such a unique experience for everybody, so our reactions to color is very different for everybody. Like I said, like yellow for me brings me joy. It reminds me of that one time I was decorating, or maybe that blue dress that my aunt Holly wore when I was like, you know, we would like shop and she bought this blue dress, and I remember her haggling over this blue dress, floral blue dress, and now I think about it and she still has it, she still wears it. And so I think that's what makes spaces really beautiful and personal, is that you can connect with it in a very intimate way.
So if you're with your clients, do you feel like when you're like kind of in the programming phase, right, having the initial conversations, do they come to you and say, you bring color to life for me, or do they have like strong opinions on their own colors? I'm curious what that process looks like.
It's about how to make them connect. I ask them, what are these colors? What are the colors that connect you with your like memories? Like I try to like jog their memory. Like what are some of their fondest memories of color? Where did you travel? Any scars from your grandma or any heirlooms? Things like that. Maybe your favorite food that brings up a lot of these memories. So that way, people become connected, and it that way they can connect with their room and their spaces. And I think it makes it easier for people to explore color and play with color that way, because a lot of people are afraid of color. I don't know why, but we've
We
all been
are.
introduced to color at such young age, and like, color is so important for uh our cognitive and
Just
uh
emotional journey or connections.
exactly. And so somehow along the way we started, losing that, but I'm trying to bring that back.
I love you for doing that. Thank you, Deb. And I'll say, I think it's the balance, and that's kind of leads into my next question is how do you balance popular preference versus the idea of personal expression and uniqueness? So like you are encouraging your clients to lean into that nostalgia, to lean into that identification that makes truly each of us unique, but it's balanced against what's in magazines and what's in popular culture, and like talk about those challenges, because I will say from I've been in the color world a long time. North Americans are very almost puritanical in their color selections. Neutrals are very important. They rarely break out of their sort of the confines of that neutral space, and like it's time to get out of that. So talk about that a little bit.
I think it's there's no like, I've seen like designers or other artists talk about how like, oh, there's you do a 50-50 or a 30-70, and I don't think there's no math to color. Color has a magical way of all working together. If you look at nature, you look at everything, it's just it all blends and it all balances all out, But I think you can play with like, start with like a piece of maybe art, furniture, lamp. Start small and gradually build your color confidence through layering, through just the practice of incorporating color into your space. Maybe you do an accent wall, and then maybe for another room, you start to fill out, paint the entire room, ceiling, drench it. Like I hear everyone's call about color drenching and everything like that. And I love that magazines and Sherwin-Williams create these beautiful palettes or a color of the year, capsule collections that help people, that guide people. And it guides me too, and it helps me to explore other colors, because sometimes I get really stuck in my color palette. And then I realize, oh my God, look at these beautiful, earthy, neutral colors with more gray or maybe even black undertones that give it a little bit more depth. And I think that helps me play with color and balance sometimes a bit more. Um,
So I'm curious about that topic too, because people will comment and be like, you know what, you guys are designers, you know that like all colors work together, but they'll be like, we don't know how to do that. How do you do that? So I think maybe your graphic design background allows you to see maybe saturation level, or you balance highs and lows. So the right contrast ratio between lights and darks. Can you maybe like put your graphic design hat on and talk to our audience about like that sort of color science that maybe you use?
I think it comes from just mixing color. I remember mixing paint when I was doing printmaking. Just, I think a lot of people can buy some even watercolor and really adding white, adding black into paint and see how it, creates. And you can create your palette through that, on like a plate. And that way you see how color interacts with other color, how you can make it not as bright. You could, tone down the saturation, make this hue, pop a little bit more, accent here and there. And so in a lot of ways, that's how I started understanding color more. But honestly, it's there's no it's just, I think, just not overthinking and just going with it and playing with color. Just find what color brings you a lot of joy. Maybe it's like a teal, green, or chartreuse, and they just kind of blend and work together.
Yeah, you are. It's like we are mind melding because my next question is about finding joy. And I want to talk about that. That's kind of been a buzzword in the design world, really, probably since 2018, that the idea of joy and color and connection and how bringing color in can really increase the idea of longevity and living with better relationships and the idea of social fitness. So strong connections to family or friends or pets or whatever that is in those interiors. There is a lot of research out there that states that's the thing that will let us live longer, healthier lives, that connection to each other. And I think color is a vital link in the components of that we create in our homes. So talk about, next, like how does color make you happy? Like what's your happiest moment about the design process with a client?
I think it's really, you nailed it. It's color is so plays such an important role in our lives, our well-being. And for me, I grew up really introverted, really shy, bullied a lot. And for me, just finding color and adding color into a space really helped promote happiness for me. And I can see how that also affects how I like, you know, I don't know. It's just such a, it's, yeah, I think when I talk to clients about color, it's, you know, they are so stifled by choosing color. And so when you connect color to like a core memory, when you can unlock that colorful moment, colorful story, because we've all got colorful stories, right?
Right.
Whether they're, ups and downs, and it's this journey, our life. And so color really celebrates that. Color celebrates our journey, our life. And so when you can pinpoint a color and add it into your space, it just helps unlock that, moment in your life. And you're when you're surrounded by that, you can go, oh my God, look at that. You can appreciate the trajectory in your life and see how far you've come, see where you've traveled, and all the connections. That one time my friend came over and brought me this beautiful artwork that's spread, and now I hang it in here, and it reminds me of that one, that bestie. And it's just fun moments, through color in your space.
Yes, I would say that your use of color is very confident. And so I would, if, before we were just meeting now, but I would have thought that you were the most confident person on the planet, right? Because your joy in color shows up like with this great confidence and this like joy of life. So
Oh,
I'm
thanks.
curious, like who, are there other designers that you admire? We talked a little bit before we started recording about the fact that you're in New Orleans. So talk about the color. You grew up in LA, and that's, LA is beautiful, amazing weather. But what's it like coming to New Orleans and this old city? And talk about your experience kind of in that region now.
Yeah, I would say every city, every country, every part of the world every place has a very unique color story. Every culture, every city uses color in a different way. Um, and in New Orleans, I think it's just the color combinations on all these homes in the Quarter, in Marigny and the Bywater, especially. There are just so many funky color combinations that I would have never imagined putting on an exterior of a house. So I just find so much inspiration in that. And there, even in the French Quarter, there are the French Quarter color collection combinations that are approved by the HDLC, which is a Historic District Landmark Commission. And I just love that there are these historic colorful combinations that are just loved and embraced by everybody here. And so I think it's such a vibrant city and such a bohemian city in that way, where people really just love color and use it in a very bold and unexpected way.
Absolutely, like
Nobody else.
unabashedly, like
Yes.
love of color. We used to have a color card. I mean, back in like the early 2000s, late 90s, called View Carré, and it was the colors of New Orleans, and like
Yeah.
just beautiful. I'll have to show it to you because I have some old samples of it in my office. But I think people are rediscovering these cities. We talked a little bit about Savannah before recording, like unabashed joy in color, and I hope that's where we get back to versus just the stark neutral existence that we've been in, which is great, right? I don't want to
Yes.
tell people it's great, but
Neutrals are
really
great. Yeah, but
we need them, but also take a risk. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how inspiration your work is for my team. We do an annual color forecast, and this year is called Color Capsules. And one of the capsules is called Paradox, and it's all about like creative expression and joyful color. And we do a design presentation for designers and like a trend forecast. And there's a section called our gallery slides, and that's like just showing designers in action and who's doing this palette well. And you're our first slide. It was the yellow color drenched room that was featured in Better Homes and Gardens. And it was all about color drenching. And like you kick off this beautiful palette because you have just fearlessly like taking on this mantle of color. So they were going to be mad at me if I didn't mention that to you and just say
oh,
thank you.
yay. No, thank you. That's so sweet.
So talk about like these fun moments of color that we're really starting to celebrate. The idea of color drenching, versus color pops. How do you use those in your interiors, and how do you make them meaningful?
So even this week, I just decided to paint my bedroom. It's been white for 4 years, and I've been complaining how like, gosh, I don't get like a restful, night of sleep here in New Orleans in my bedroom. I don't know why, and I realized it was just lacking color. It was lacking a depth of color, and so I decided to paint it this on Monday into this really calming, sort of like a minty
Mm.
color. But I painted the entire room, ceiling, baseboards, crown molding, everything, just one color. It just helps create a cozy enclosed space with no contrast of like white ceilings and things like that. But yeah, now it just brings me so much calmness and coziness.
And
And
just and it's like immersive, right? You wake up and you feel like this sigh. It's interesting. A lot of painting contractors. We talked to all sorts of people at Sherwin, and painting contractors are like, "Is this color drenching thing real?" And I think it is. And so, if you would use a room, drenched in color, and what that means is ceiling, walls, trim, doors, everything, like just immersed in color. Would you use that technique in a whole home, or would you maybe pick some adjacent rooms? How would you employ that technique?
I would be selective about using drenching in like very specific spaces. Not I love a little contrast. I like to mix it up. I don't think every space needs to be drenched in color. I think there needs to be a balance, some breathing, breathing room. And so I think powder rooms, bathrooms are really excellent spaces to go bold in that way. If drenching seems overwhelming, start small. I think doing it in those tiny spaces can really help and guide you and build your color confidence that way. And maybe you can do that in a bedroom. I think bedrooms are great, or your
Yes,
office. I think
offices are
drenching can
great.
work in
Oh,
any space,
Yeah.
unless I would say unless it's like a open concept where like the kitchen and the living room kind of blur and share the same like ceiling space, that can be tricky. So you know that would be, because I mean I guess you can do it. There are no rules, right? I think
Right.
you can do it in the open space, but I think in a very selective space like bedrooms that are enclosed um are more impactful when you color drench.
If so, in open concept plans, would you employ a accent wall? Sometimes, people always ask, is that a way to bring color in a huge expansive space?
Yes,
Um,
yeah,
do you
I
use
agree.
that?
I use it here actually. I'm looking at my living room and there's an accent wall, and sometimes in the open concept space, having an accent wall helps at least define each space. So I have this accent wall in my living room that says this is a living room, and then I have my kitchen cabinets painted in a, you know, darker, richer blue that defines that is the
That
kitchen. So
space.
color can help define open concepts, open spaces a bit.
I love that. That is such a great tip. So I'm going to move into a kind of a new like questions. Like we talked a little bit about cultural associations, but like where else do you find color inspiration?
I find color inspiration from, I mean, so many places. I mean, from designers, other designers. Like I get inspiration from Justina Blakeney, who is
Oh,
such a
oh my
talented
gosh, so
designer
talented.
artist, and she started painting these beautiful portraits, self portraits, and I just find so much inspiration from the way she uses color to, even like Pamela Shamshiri. All of her interior spaces really um, inspire me as well. Seeing how she uses color in a very rich, deep, and meaningful way, and also just from sometimes going to the paint store, going to Sherwin-Williams and looking at the fan deck, looking at what's out there, what's current, like the color capsule, and seeing what are the current colors and trends that can guide me into uh, a new direction. And I love that. And sometimes designers need that. And
I swear we are like on the same wavelength. I was going to say designers get stuck too. I'm
yeah,
sure clients don't believe that they just think we know all the things all the time, but you do. You get stuck in the like kind of the tropes of,
right.
you're busy and this color is going to
Yes.
work and it's hard to get out of that sort of like
One trick pony. I'm like, I always ask, I always tell my client, meaning my husband, the client. I
the
call him the
clients,
client.
the clients.
I'm like, gosh, am I doing yellow too much? Is the same yellow? Am I becoming this one trick pony, one trick yellow pony? And he's like, just try a different yellow. Let's see what's out there. Like, let's go to Sherwin. Go see like what are some of the current yellows that we're bringing. Maybe you want to try a little, like a butterscotch or something, like a buttery yellow.
And see where that takes you. Did you
Right.
happen to check out we had this campaign this year called The Loneliest Color? I don't know if you saw it. And we partnered with Dapper Dan. Dap. I mean, this is just so funny.
Oh,
Dab.
yes.
And it was about we went and looked back over 14 years of all our color data and we found the least tinted color. And I just like we wanted to know what that color was. And it happened to be a color called Kingdom Gold, which is gorgeous, sort of alchemical gold, similar to the stripes on the banquette behind you. Maybe a little deeper, right? Like maybe a
Yeah.
little richer, but it just happened to be maybe it was the shade just a little too dark or a little too saturated that people wouldn't gravitate towards it, but it's a stunning color. So we did a whole campaign celebrating the loneliest colors, which what we called it. And it was great. It just opened people's eyes up. Like,
Yes.
I drive around now and I see front doors painted in that color. So I think just that, like, seeing what's out there, getting inspired by inspiration. It comes in all shapes and sizes, all forms, and that's really a helpful tool to get people out of their rut and take on a color. I'm thinking about painting my dining room, which I'm sitting in now, which is this gorgeous green, and I've loved it for since COVID. I painted it probably in 2020, and now I'm ready for something else. I'm ready. I think I'm going to paint this weekend. I don't know what though.
Yes. And you
So I
say,
can't wait. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm like looking at that rusty, gorgeous pillow. I'm thinking maybe I should do orange, like
do
terracotta.
it. Oh, yes. Terracotta or brown. Brown was having a, big moment.
Big
Brown
moment.
town.
Yes.
But that's what I love about like what you do is that you're researching, right? History of color. And like sometimes as designers, I'm busy, on site doing things, and so I'm not researching enough color sometimes. And I love that you bring other colors from the past, the heritage colors back onto, the forefront and things like that. And that inspires me.
Well, thank you for saying that. We really do love that aspect of the work we do and pride ourselves. We want to make it easier for designers, so we'll go do the work and bring you these gorgeous collections. And so yeah, it's a good partnership. I appreciate that. So this has been amazing, but I would just say, what has been your most favorite recent color moment? Is there something that we haven't talked about that people should pay attention to?
Oh man, I mean, I think color. We talked about color drenching. We talked about all accent walls. I think just having fun with color, use it in unexpected ways. Paint. I been wanting to do color blocking on just painting trims, just the trims and doors.
Looks, I
in
love
in
painted
accent
doors.
color.
I know.
And then painting your door a different color than the trim, and just you can leave your walls white or have it, three different color tones. Like I am trying to get to that, you know, but
Like a
as
gradation, like a light, mid, and deep value of the same color, kind of
oh,
like
no, not
that.
a gradation, but like just different color blocking, like, painting your walls a different color, and uh your molding, your baseboards a different color, and then your door a different color. So having
Oh,
three colorful moments in a space could be monochromatic, tone on tone, or it could be three different uh contrasting colors,
well,
and
you
working with
will
that.
you will have to keep us posted on that because that's exciting. I just love it. I love talking to you. You're wonderful.
Oh,
Um,
yay. I love
uh,
that you love color. So
we try, it's like a constant, what keeps me up at night, I guess, getting people inspired and trying something new. And we're kind of out of that Scandinavian minimalism thing and moving into something new, right? This middle part of this decade. So I can't wait to see what 2025 holds for all of us. So this has been wonderful. Tell our listeners where they can find you if they
you
want to
can
check you
find,
and
yes,
talk about your
me.
book. We didn't even talk about your book.
Oh,
Wait,
yes, my
before
book.
we
Oh,
close, tell me
yes.
about your book.
My book came out last year. It's called Old Brand New: Colorful Rooms for Maximal Living. And it's all about celebrating color, helping readers find and find their colorful moments and build their color confidence, and getting inspired by color and use it in a fearless way. And
Oh,
that's
that's
just
right up
how,
my alley. That's amazing.
yeah.
How is it on Amazon? Can people find
Yeah,
it
you
on
can buy
Amazon?
it at your local bookstore, Barnes and Noble. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on, and a bookshop dot or all the bookstores
Yes,
wherever
well,
books are sold.
you can find it. Well, I will be ordering that immediately, and then I will be bringing it to find you somewhere so you can sign
Bring
it
it
for
to New
me.
Orleans and I will sign your copy, and then
Okay.
we'll grab a cocktail and talk about
Deal.
color.
Deal,
Yes.
deal, deal, deal. So if people want to check out your work, see what you got going on, how can they find you?
You all can find me on Instagram at Dabito, Dabito. You can find my blog, oldbrandnew.com. And yeah, that's where I
Uh,
celebrate color.
Keep going, buddy. Keep being amazing and putting these interiors out into the world and making your clients happy and making me happy. I appreciate it very much. In our next segment, we're excited to talk to our October Designer of the Month, Joni Spear. Joni is principal at Joni Spear Interior Design in St. Louis, Missouri. And she's known for a thoughtfully custom designed interior that balances contemporary style with beautiful antiques and inspiration from the past, which is a perfect segue into our discussion on unexpected design in this episode. So, hi, Joni, and welcome to Colormixology.
Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for being here. What an honor.
It is my absolute delight to have you on. Just knowing a little bit about your work, I feel like it's a great we can have a great conversation about designing for the unexpected. So before we jump into that, tell me a little bit about how you got started in this wacky world of design.
So, I think as a child, my biggest influence was my mother, who loved to decorate. We had a beautiful home, and we always had like catalogs. So back in the day, we didn't have restoration hardware. It was the Spiegel catalog or the J.C. Penney catalog. And so I would take those catalogs, and as I was playing with my Barbie dream house, I made Barbie have some neighbors. And so I would rip pages out of the catalog and tape them up to my bed. And then take like a Kleenex box and turn it upside down, and then have the Kleenex, be their blanket, and cotton balls for pillows, and and then fast forward, I graduated from high school, went to college, and 17 years old, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. And I remember sitting in the guidance counselor's office, and it was a Catholic school, and Sister Lisa Mary, we were going through the catalogs, and she said, "Would you like to take an architecture class?" And I said, "Well, of course I would like to take an architecture class." And so she's reading through the program, and it said, "Oh, you have to be an interior design major." And I said, "Okay, I'll be an interior design major."
Sounds
And
good.
yeah, so I have my degree in interior architecture, and I have been doing it ever since.
That is absolutely wonderful. I think we should take a poll of designers and ask how many of us started with the Barbie Dream Home, because
Oh,
I had one as well, and I would never play with the Barbies. I would just set up the
yeah,
interiors. But
right?
you're a very clever girl, because I did not use magazines for the neighbors. That's so great. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I remember like getting the tape and taping it up, and
Oh, that was genius. See, even at an early age, design is in there. It's in there
right.
forever. Well, so
Yeah.
fast forward now. So you've been a practicing designer, you own your own firm. That's amazing. But talk to the audience, like maybe some descriptions on what your style is, and sort of what people know you for.
So I am known for classic interiors with an edge, and also bold use of color. I don't know if you've seen my website, but there's loads of color. I love color. And apparently, that's why people are drawn to me, is because they know how I can infuse color into their homes in a meaningful way. And it has done well for me. I love white. I love beige. I love every color, but for some reason, the people that are drawn to me are the ones that want these bold interiors.
And how do you get them over the hesitation point of taking a risk and trying something new with color? Do you have a tip that you can share?
I always have to check their threshold, right? And just getting to know the client, and just, conversation after spending a couple of hours with them. And I slowly get into it. What is your favorite color? What is your least favorite color? Do you like daytime? Do you like nighttime? Do you like hot colors, or do you prefer more subdued colors? And then once I have an idea of their likes and dislikes, I take that into account when starting with a color. Another thing that really dictates, and again, every project is different, every home is different, but sometimes the landscape dictates our colors, right? If we've got a big picture window or a big sliding door and it's the focal point of the room, well, we don't want to compete with Mother Nature.
Right.
And
You want to
so
coordinate. Yep.
right. So that's always, there's lots of factors in determining colors and how to go from there.
So you had mentioned that you take sort of a blending of the old and the new. How would you categorize that? Like, what represents the old, and kind of what's your fresh take on that?
So I feel that the past dictates the future, right? I mean, everything is cyclical. Everything comes around again.
We've seen before. Sure.
Right. And so say my clients love to ski, right? And I will be at an antique mall and I'll see a photo of a mountain or something that represents skiing. I always try to connect with something that draws their heart in, something that they really enjoy doing. If they love to read, I'll look for a first edition novel or, something to make their house different from their neighbor's house.
Right, because that's a big part of what this episode is about is the personalization factor of taking a risk. Talk about how shopping for an antique is a totally different experience than going to a luxury furniture store and selecting something out of a catalog that you can order. So talk about that sort of unexpected nature.
So I always tell people my homes are not show homes. They're not in any way, shape, or form. I mean, anyone can go into a store and say, I want that sofa, I want that chair, I want that light fixture. I don't want your house to look like anyone else's house. This is your house, your home. This is where, I want you to thrive. And so again, every client is different, every project is different, but my goal is to get to know that person. And the more I know them, then I kind of, it's also important to learn their dislikes.
Agreed. I think it's equally as important, if not more.
Not everyone knows what they don't like.
Exactly. It helps sometimes a designer or psychiatrist or therapist or however we want to call ourselves sometimes to help them guide them in that direction to say, yeah, let's start. If you're overwhelmed with this discussion on color, let's start with what doesn't work for you. And that's often a much more successful path. So do your clients trust you, or do you find that you have lots of discussions when you offer up something new?
Oh, sure. No, you have to gain their trust. I know we had touched base on trends, right? And so, the big focal wall trend. And, I'm allergic to focal walls.
I love it.
Personally, I've never in my career have I done a focal wall.
Done an accent wall? Ooh,
An accent wall, yes.
Yes,
And
yes,
so,
yes.
I want the loyal blue with the the molding. I want that to be the as soon as you walk in the house. And then you look in the other room and it makes no sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I try to steer them away from trends because what's happening today, tomorrow it's gone. And then, we wasted all that money, all that wood, all the carpentry. And now I cannot stand that color.
Yes. Yes. So things change quickly.
Yes.
And so how do what's your advice on someone that's interested in color, but they want to find the joy in the unexpected, but you want it to be timeless? I know that's a loaded question with many facets.
So a lot of times people will say, oh, I was talking to my mother-in-law in Southern California and she painted her entire house repose gray. And she thinks that'll look, I think she wants me to do that. Right. And I say, well, your house is north facing. Your mother-in-law is in Southern California. That color is not going to translate here in your northern exposure room. It may look great in her house, but let's bring it to your house and realize it's not going to work. It's going to read totally differently.
Totally. So what would your advice be? Can I just ask? If you are in the Midwest, northern exposure, full 4 seasons.
So I love blusher, warm colors.
Mm-hmm.
The one project that I just did, we did quaint peach.
Mm-hmm. Peach. Fancy way of saying peach.
Okay, on the ceiling, it was again a northern, and this was a family. moving from Aspen, Colorado, and
Mm.
they had, all the sunlight. And here they're moving to St. Louis, Missouri, in a dark, dark house. And not only that, the windows were tinted.
Oh man.
And so when we put that on the ceiling, it just completely brightened the entire space.
I bet that looked magical. Beautiful.
Yes, yes, yes. She was very pleased with it.
Well, I, encourage people to go and check out your website and kind of see your work because it speaks for itself, and you can see the love of color come through when you see those your images and your sort of your design style. But before we get to that, tell me, about, so you don't like trend, but what's one color moment that you're seeing now that you're really appreciating?
Um, I feel like the colors of nature, right, are always. I love greens. I love putty, taupe. I'm more of a purist, so we could say red and green and everything in between. But I would say my favorite color is green. And so actually in my own home, and this is, again, I do this with clients. If we're doing their entire home, I say, let's start in the kitchen, right? That is the hub of the home. And so are we selecting a natural stone or are we working with the natural stone?
Right.
And in one project, they had granite that was this orange, that had orange tones, and she could not stand it. And so, a little trick, I'm very old school, and I like to use the color wheel, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, I go with like a contrasting color. And so, orange, the contrasting color of orange is blue. And so we introduced blue into the kitchen and it completely transformed the space because the saturation of the island and the blue, they were the same hues. So they really balanced each other out.
That's the
And
key.
so, yes, I really take time in thinking about that, the levels of saturation, the natural light, illumination, artificial lighting. There are so many factors that come into play when selecting paint. And, it's not everyone can do it. I mean, anyone, you can pick a color from your, you know, deck, but it doesn't always look good.
It
It
doesn't
has to
always.
be, it has to check off all the boxes.
That's like my guiding principle, I guess, if you will, for design. It's about balance. It can't just be one note. It can't be all cool or it can't be all warm, because it's not going to find that harmony, like that thing that makes an interior great. It's about balance, in my opinion. And color is right there. And it's such an incredible tool to neutralize something that's maybe not your favorite. You put another color adjacent to a piece of marble that's maybe, feels like a little outdated, and it can take on a whole new life. And I think that's an exciting exercise for people to try instead of just chucking it and starting over. You can get creative with color and help to kind of salvage and keep things a little longer instead of, starting over. So yeah, that's a great tip. I love it. Well, this was awesome. And so it was great to talk to you. How can people find you?
I have a website and that is jonispear.com. I'm
Easy. Got it.
also on House and I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not super active on social media because
You're busy.
I'm busy. Yeah. Like
Right.
I have a very small firm. And so I don't have time to post all the time.
Sure.
I do. At one point you had asked me, can I add one more thing?
Sure, of course.
So you had asked me, do people trust me? Right.
Mhm.
And one of the ways that I try to gain their trust is I say, you know what? If you don't like this color, I will pay to have it repainted. And never have I ever had to do that.
That is, you're putting yourself on the line. That's what designers do every day because they believe so strongly. But that's like next level. Good for you.
Well, I mean, all you have is your reputation, right?
Agreed.
And it's true. And I stand behind my product 100%. And if they're not happy, I'm not going to get a review, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So yeah, so I do try to stand behind my work.
Thank you so much for your time, for your beautiful work. Keep going, keep doing amazing things. I love St. Louis. I used to come quite often to present trends. Well, thank you so much, Joni. This has been really insightful. I love your take on color and sort of the unexpected and how those moments really matter to make a home really beautiful.
Well, thank you, Sue. I've really enjoyed it.
Seth Vandenberg is our featured November Designer of the Month. Seth is known for his visionary approach to residential and commercial design that features unique, vintage, and one-of-a-kind art and furnishings. Hi, Seth, and welcome to Colormixology.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So we always love to ask designers how they got their start because everyone's story is so unique. So how'd you get here?
Great question. My mom would like to answer that question. So I actually started off as a biology major, and probably my second year in had an internship at Walt Disney World as a character performer. And I think that we all kind of go into maybe our professions or the idea of what we should be doing or pursuing, obviously based on like what we experienced in high school. And actually was at that internship at Walt Disney World. I was on break and I was sketching and drawing and talking to my mom and venting about how poorly I was doing in science and not really understanding like what was happening or what was wrong. And she was like, have you ever thought or considered about interior design? And I'm like, it was completely out of nowhere, but we moved around a lot. In fact, I was a product of Wasilla, Alaska, and spent a good majority of my adolescent growing up in Alaska, in a state that, it's pretty cold there, as you probably can assume.
Right.
And, I think people either gravitate to the interiors, they gravitate to exterior experiences. My family, we moved around a lot and took on residential renovation projects as we moved. And I think that I was exposed to the idea of renovating spaces. We moved around probably every 4 years. My parents worked for the government. And so every time you move, there's an opportunity to either reclaim what you may have lost in the previous, residence, or you're trying to shape and make the space that you're given your own. And, I think that through that experience and that exposure and my parents, and we were constantly renovating, there was this constant reinvention. And, fast forward back to Disney World, it was at that moment during that conversation that I actually changed my degree from biology to interior design. They did not have an accredited program. And so spent 6 months at that school taking some, relatively intro classes to the major through their home economics program. And I hate to say this, but there was
so funny.
Interior 101, mind you, like, here I am. I'll give you a little bit of backstory on the science thing, but here I am. I'm looking through a microscope, and I'm zoomed in, and I'm looking at what's under the lens, and I'm drawing and sketching, and the professor's walking around, and he's like, "What exactly are you drawing?" And here I was thinking that I was drawing this specimen, and he looked in, and he's like, "Seth, you've been drawing the cracked glass of the lens." And so I think it was like that moment where, I realized that was not the direction I needed to take for me. Anyways, ended up going back and taking intro to interiors. And I remember the first exam, it was like a mud house is made up of dirt, rock, or something. And I called my mom. I was like, I think this is the major for me. Like I've pretty much nailed this degree. It's only got more complicated from there, but I ended up transferring to Virginia and graduating with a bachelor's of art from Marymount University. Was actually a Clinton Global Scholar and took a year and went over to Dubai and studied at the American University of Dubai for that period of time. And that was a really interesting experience because we're talking about 2008. And that was really when Dubai was kind of coming into its own. The islands were being, built at that time. So they were dredging the Gulf, and blowing the sand back in to create the islands. Bergh had just been created. They hadn't even breached the sky with the tallest building in the world. So I was there kind of in this moment where I got to watch the convergence of money and design and global influences. And it's the one, even now to this day, I kind of can reference back to my time in Dubai and say, you can have a lot of money, but doesn't always make for great design. And it's not said in an insulting way to my experience in Dubai, but it was a moment where you realize that sometimes the limitations of a project that really can shape a project and maybe make the project better than just being given free reign, right? And an unlimited amount of money.
I think that's a very, very good point. I can remember that time when everybody was talking about going to Dubai. If you were a young designer, like get on a plane, go, because there was so much work going on. But it was everything all at once, all over the place. I remember thinking that's crazy that you got to spend that time there. I like, what was your favorite project? Like, I want to know more.
Well, so, my university, we had two programs really. One was to London and one was to Italy. And I think quite the contrary. I mean, you're going to, maybe through this conversation, you'll learn that I'm a bit of a contrarian, but, I had no desire to go to either of those destinations. And I kind of thought to myself, I'll probably end up there at some point, right? Just through basic travel. And so why dedicate maybe a semester to going to those locations? No doubt there would have probably been more of a classical approach to the design. I mean, maybe my background would have been more classical in nature, but Dubai exposed me to some, naturally I was modern has always been kind of in my ethos. And so Dubai certainly exposed me to some really extravagant and cool things. I mean, I got to go on a yacht after one evening with a sheikh, and I went to one of the palaces and we had camel and,
Wow.
Really things and dare I say this, like at the time, I think we were actually in the war with Iraq. And, at the moment I was flying over and it was like Iraq was on the map below. And I thought to myself, like, I may never come back here, right? Like this may be like the moment, it is what it is for now, but like maybe I'll never go back to Dubai. And, like I thought maybe Italy and London will always be there. But certainly Dubai's, and actually what's interesting, we just took a project last fall. We worked on a restaurant here in Atlanta, and the owners, they travel to Dubai still to this day for influence in what they want to do and bring back to the States. So it's it's been an interesting crossover, and it's found its way to kind of either break ice or draw parallels. And even now I'm pulling, references, and, our firm is heavily drawn to international design, and maybe there's a little bit of a commercial aspect to our work, but.
So talk about that little. I love the name of your firm. Where did that come from?
It really came from so I've worked previously for other designers and had, every one of those practices I worked at, it was the name of the principal on the door. And I don't want to say it didn't create it definitely put you in maybe in the place of who you were at that firm. And when I decided to do this, it was like creating an environment where a lot of creative minds can come together and not one person's voice is louder than another. I think I operate a pretty collaborative environment. And so the idea of the drawing room, obviously there's a historical component to the name, it refers to a room in a home, but more than that, it was, what we touch on is far beyond even an interior. Like we'll go down the path of branding and personal identification and architecture and landscape. And I really wanted to create, and sometimes there's graphic design and sometimes there's, all five senses are being touched. And so the drawing room was really given that name, or we kind of give for a specific reason. It was to kind of pull all these creative houses together. And really, I didn't want a firm that had my name on it. It was, maybe I leave, right? And someone else takes the reign.
Yeah, I love it. And I did not go there with the drawing room. Of course, I mean, a Victorian drawing room. I went there as like a place that people draw on experiences together. That was when I was thinking.
Well, I like that even more. Like let's throw that in the mix. I mean, drawing experiences
so cool.
Together.
Yes.
I'm writing that down now.
Well, what a fantastic path. So do you touch on primarily residential interiors, or do you have a nice mix of both?
I mean, we've certainly touched on commercial, but commercial, I did commercial design, back when I lived in DC, and that lovely little word that we are familiar with, value engineering, is not my friend. And
right.
Someone who has champagne tastes, that doesn't really bode well It's really not that fun either, right? Like to have to source alternatives to an idea. I mean, I guess it's part of our job, but residential work, there's a completely different component to even how I work with clients, that it's a really emotional and it's personal, right? And that doesn't seem to happen in commercial environments. We do probably about, I'm 85, 90% residential, and maybe there's some offshoot commercial work. Maybe there's a law firm, or there's a
restaurant,
a restaurant, or someone that we know owns something, and we'll do that. And that's kind of the extent of our commercial work. But residential work is so personal, and I think I've found that to be most enjoyable, because not only is the product that you're sourcing a lot more personal. Let's make sure it's going to last for 5, 10, 50, from a commercial point of view. Right. We're not really worried about double rubs and the durability of things, right? So, but even then, more so, I know where my client's underwear is located. So it's a really personal environment. And believe it or not, the ability to go into someone's home and shape it in a way that really it changes who they are and how they interact with their space. I think a lot of people are they have maybe a superficial idea of what interior design is. And maybe that was my own bias when I was in high school, or high school and early college. Maybe my own bias was, that's again kind of a superficial, it's topical, it's a furniture piece, it's a lamp or whatever. But I've gone into people's homes that were less than awesome, applied our designs to them, and then watched them in tears, or watched their energies change around their space. And it really shows the power of space, and what better space to really touch on or even influences someone's home, where they're designed they're supposed to go home and decompress, or find energy again to go back into the day, right? Or where they're obviously meeting family. But it's amazing, the power that our industry has on the personal, on your personal existence on this planet, in your environment, and how important space is, and how it influences you as a day to day
as an individual. I think that is sort of the unsung hero nature of what designers do. It's not just about luxury. It's not just about something beautiful. It's creating somebody's home. There is nothing more personal than that. And that's what makes this job so challenging and rewarding, I think, for all of us, no matter what your experience is, or, if you work for a huge firm, or, just on your own. It's quite a journey, which kind of leads me into our discussion about unexpected design. So that's our sort of topic of the episode. And I think you do that really well. It's the idea of embracing a concept, maybe in direct opposition to what's popular. Because what is it that is personal in design? It's like finding the joy in the unexpected. So can you talk about that a little bit, and maybe how it relates to the work that you do?
Sure. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there's no better contrarian than myself, and maybe that's my horoscope. I'm a Gemini, so there's definitely always
I'm
a
married
duality.
to a Gemini. That's why I like you. I can tell.
What's your sign?
I'm a Leo.
Okay,
Lion.
Leo.
Yeah.
Good signs as well.
Yes.
I have a Leo in my office, but even here in the South, our aesthetic certainly isn't what I would consider Southern by any means, and I think being in Atlanta is certainly going through a renaissance right now. We have a tax break for movies to be filmed here. And so with that, there's an influx of people coming in from New York and Los Angeles, and, producers and actors. And I think that's stimulating other maybe design styles to rise to the surface. But, the South has a very distinct style, at least from my point of view. And kind of running not solo, but running against the grain there. It's certainly
Atlanta is, right? It's not like the rest of the South. I feel like it's a microcosm of its own cultural associations. Sure. It's there's so much good design going on in Atlanta. Wow.
We just had a big 3 festivals this last week. We had Modern Atlanta, which is a big home tour. We had our first art fair. And in that, certainly there was some diversity in the work. But, when you think about the Southeast region, you've got Charlotte, Savannah, Birmingham,
Charleston.
Nashville, Asheville. I think of some others that are some big names, but that's the culture of those cities and the diversity of those cities. But we definitely have a Southern style. So, anyways, we are certainly driven by the unexpected. That doesn't really go with our use of color, but really our for me, it's important that an object that we select is not just like a chair to be a chair, right? Like everything in our portfolio or even in our project has a story, and those products can almost stand on their own in a white box. And maybe that's my experience from Dubai. Maybe that's my influence from Walt Disney World. Like there's probably a lot of things happening there that why I think that everything I touch or everything that goes into a room is relatively important. I also don't, being a product of someone who moved around so much, like I've gone through probably 10 plus bed sizes and shapes in my youth because the room didn't accommodate it. But like, it's hard for me now to just buy furniture to buy furniture. I kind of want you to buy it one time. And with that, it kind of needs to somehow attach itself to you. And oftentimes that's just the story or the storytelling of a piece. Art's super important and it's super personal. And, art often leads our interiors. Product, we don't play heavily with like a lot of patterns or text, like not just patterns, but we're definitely not that firm, right? Like for me, I'd rather buy a chair with a really great silhouette and put a solid textile on it and kind of respect or honor the form of that piece than kind of buy a box and throw a crazy fabric on it and then replace the fabric when it gets tired and puts a timestamp. I kind of want an interior that not just, I shouldn't say the word like transcends time, but like will definitely have life to it.
Longevity. Yep.
And that's
sure.
really because I got probably tired of throwing things out every couple of years. But anyways, you had asked if we, back to the unexpected, I think that, that goes back to like why every object may be able to tell its independent story. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at an image within our portfolio, oftentimes you'll see one of three principles at play. Actually, it's every principle, all three principles are at play. There's an item that happens to be new. There's an item that happens to be now or current or of the moment. And then there happens to be a novel item. So you kind of get this now, new, and novel idea between all the pieces. And so you don't have maybe one period of time or a product that's from one vendor moment or one vendor or manufacturer or even one time, timestamp or period. There's product that we've designed specifically for that space. There's product that's maybe vintage. There's something that maybe the client brought with them and we built a room around it. So there's these three things kind of working, and that kind of becomes, the formula, if you want to call it, if there is a formula for how we work. That is one of our maybe our unspoken formula.
Yeah, I would say that that's like the process maybe, but everything about what your process is unexpected, because how do you even begin to source that? I mean, I know that there's a lot of great resources in Atlanta, but are you traveling beyond, Georgia to get pieces? And
I guess it goes back to like being the contrarian and going against the grain. But if sometimes I've opened up these interior magazines, especially from our region, and I'm like, oh, okay, I know where you bought that, right? Like I can go buy that too, and maybe that's a play that people are comfortable with. We ask our clients to have courage, and really we do well with people that maybe have a stronger sense of self. Mm-hmm. Our early business card was like, we're not going to give you what your neighbor has. And to say that, but also to like stand on those words, really says a lot about, the confidence of the people that hire us.
Agreed. It's a combination. It's you and your firm and also the people that hire you. That takes guts, right? To not conform to what everybody else believes is beautiful and create your own thing. That's courageous. Wonderful.
And really to kind of own who you are. I mean, like, when we're asking someone to, get really in touch with themselves, and sometimes that's scary, sometimes it's scary even thinking about it when it comes to relationships, let alone like what product I want to purchase for my home. I mean, that's but like, again, I mentioned, like, I think that this goes back to the idea of, you can have an interior that's relatively superficial, or you can have one that's really personal. And I think that we strive for the latter.
Well, I think we could continue to talk about this all day. And I know I'm super grateful for the time that we've spent together. But I think one aspect of the conformity, right, is a little of the
Sure.
social media effect. People see
Sure.
so many things out there and they believe that that's, they can't come outside of the boundaries of what they see and interpret as great design. And that's why it's really important to have designers like you and your team, like pushing the boundaries and showing people that there is another way that is deeply personal, and it's worth like taking that risk and finding the joy in the unexpected.
Sure. And to be fair, I mean, the commercialized, furniture market, I mean, it's, you can see there's a lot of commonalities with a lot of the furniture manufacturers, at least from a commercial, retail point of view. They're all kind of selling the same thing. I used to have a benchmark when I was so I did lighting design for a year when I was in DC, and we had a benchmark, and it was, if it's made it to the Holiday Inn, like the style is dead. Right.
That's it. That's
now I'm like,
yep.
What's the benchmark now? Cause like everyone's kind of, pushing the same thing.
Yeah. It's hard to find. So I think designers find patterns well, right? And so they know when they've seen, you can see, I've seen it. So it's often the thing that you haven't seen that becomes what's, appealing. But there's a lot out there. So it's hard to track. Well, so let's bring it back to color. Is there any color moments that are happening now in design that you are liking, or?
I recently did a presentation for some real estate agents here in the city, and they wanted to talk about trends. And I'm like, I really don't conform to trends. And maybe that's part of my mantra, right? Is to like go against the trends and be the opposite, intentionally opposite. And, from a color point of view, like it's often led by the clients. I mean, there's personal likes by way of color, and I'd rather just lean into those,
to inform
rather than conform to a trend. Yeah. I mean, we just got done painting a client's like interior in a canary yellow. That is not by any means like on any of the current color trends. And for me, again, it's not that our interiors are led by those color trends. Like this goes back to a client who knows themselves, right? Or through our process of working together, we try to extract what maybe they are stimulated by. And in this instance, she likes the colors red, black, gray, and yellow. Well, what do you do with that, right? So, our use of color really is a reflection of maybe the confidence that a client has or what can bring to the table. So I wouldn't say that necessarily there's a color that, I certainly have my favorites. Like, I do like yellow, and I really love red. And, but something that was like, I don't wear color. And it's not because maybe I'm intimidated by it myself in terms of my own wardrobe. But, as dare I say this, but as a rule, if you will, it's one that my team will certainly attest to. I like to wear black, and I like to encourage that they wear black, because at the end of the day, like our projects aren't about like our personal creativity, right? I like to sit down in front of a client and let them bring themselves to the table. Our job is very psychological. And so I spend a lot of time like really trying to understand who they are. So really the clients are the one that leads the color choices. I'm here to kind of
be the steward. Yes,
put a
be
lens
the
on
steward
it.
of that journey. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm so excited to have gotten to know you a little bit better. How can people find you? They will obviously ask when want to know.
Sure. Well, you can find us on Instagram. I will be very honest and say that I am not the greatest at Instagram. I have to come up with another caption. I'm gonna
Right.
But Instagram at The Drawing Room ATL, or they can go to our website, which is thedrawingroomatl.com. The ATL stands for Atlanta. So thedrawingroomatl.com.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on Colormixology. And hopefully I'll be down in Atlanta soon and we can meet in person.
Come on down. There's a lot of fun going on here.
I love it. Thank you so much for listening. You can find Dabito at Dabito on Instagram, and his artwork at oldbrandnew.com and at Old Brand New Shop on Instagram. Learn more about the loneliest color, Kingdom Gold, at tlc.sherwin.com. If you enjoyed this conversation, please consider subscribing, leave us a review, and tell the other design and color curious people in your life all about Colormixology. Tune in next time with guest designer Nicholas Obeid as we unpack the fashion and interior design trend of quiet luxury or stealth wealth. See you next time on Colormixology.